Hello, it's Psychocore, how society rewards shallow living. Picture waking up tomorrow to realize your entire existence has been a carefully orchestrated performance. Every choice you believed was yours, every preference you held dear, was actually implanted by unseen forces. The clothing you select, the phrases you speak, even your mannerisms weren't born from your authentic self, but from a handbook of superficiality designed to keep you compliant. This isn't some dystopian fantasy, this is your current reality. The most troubling aspect is how willingly you've participated in your own manipulation. While you rest with your device nearby, countless algorithms dissect your deepest cravings. They study your hunger for validation, your terror of insignificance, your desperate need to appear valuable despite feeling empty inside. When they locate that fracture in your awareness, they offer you a reward wrapped in artificial sparkle, a fleeting moment of recognition that blazes briefly before vanishing. They label it achievement. They call it importance. But it's merely a performance of illusions crafted to prevent you from questioning the entire setup. Want to know the most devastating truth? Today's society doesn't celebrate the courageous. It doesn't honor deep thinkers. It doesn't reward those who cultivate genuine substance. Instead, it elevates those who excel at deception. People who transform their personality into a polished exhibition, who understand that skill matters less than image. While you remain convinced of your freedom, believing your choices are truly yours, that your worth stems from something genuine, millions of hidden sensors gather your information to convert you into merchandise. Not a person, but a commodity. Something to be packaged, exhibited, and marketed. Does this shock you? Does it create unease? Excellent. That discomfort proves something real still exists within you. Because everything else in your life has become so saturated with artificiality that distinguishing between your true essence and your worn mask has become impossible. Consider the most recent praise you received. Did you genuinely earn it? Or did you simply present a carefully curated fragment of your existence? Can you recall the last time you felt valuable without needing to demonstrate it? Exactly. Such moments are rare because the world has drained authenticity of its meaning. It's been reduced to a label you can attach to your biography, provided it appears attractive and generates sufficient approval. Meanwhile, those who should inspire you dissolve into a sea of identical smiling faces, all promoting the same delusion that happiness can be purchased through appearances. Nobody explained this clearly because they preferred your distraction. They wanted you to believe that brightening your photos slightly, learning to modulate your voice convincingly, or faking enthusiasm in every word would eventually lead to fulfillment. But that moment never arrives because superficiality is an endless abyss. It constantly demands more attention, more approval, more meaningless applause. Each time you think you've succeeded, it strips away whatever purpose you had remaining. Ever wonder why modern society favors shallow individuals? Because controlling masses obsessed with validation is simpler than managing people willing to think independently. When everyone competes for appearance, nobody has time to question whether this entire circus holds any value. You continue feeding the system through small acts of compliance, scrolling, commenting, adjusting your persona to meet expectations you never chose. Perhaps you think I'm being dramatic, that this is merely theatrical reflection. But tell me, isn't it more chilling to know it's accurate? What nobody reveals is that this worship of superficiality wasn't accidental. It didn't emerge overnight as some innocent error. It was constructed with surgical precision by those who understood the human mind's weakness when faced with recognition. Here emerges an even more sinister element rarely discussed: the power of constant comparison. This comparison corrodes your judgment and transforms you into an addict of others' displays. You believe you control your desires, but every time you observe someone else's life through a screen, your mind becomes contaminated. They inject you with slow poison that alters what you want, what you value, what you think you need. This poison is called superficial aspiration. It's the whisper repeatedly telling you that without displaying success, you're nobody. That without flawless appearance, your opinions don't matter. That without a showcase-worthy life, your existence is failure. Notice the perfect trap? First, they convince you to compare yourself constantly. Then they persuade you that you're always losing. Finally, they sell you the remedy disguised as an easy solution. A new filter, a better framed photograph, a phrase that sounds more intelligent than your actual thoughts. This is how they convert your need to belong into an exhausting routine that never ends. Look around you. Everything becomes an absurd competition to appear interesting. Conversations don't center on what someone feels or contemplates, but how effectively they can display it. Have you wondered how many confident-appearing people are actually crumbling internally? How many who smile at every post sleep anxiously because they can't bear being forgotten? This is the consequence of a world that idolizes surfaces. Nobody knows their true identity. Here comes the most uncomfortable part. Most prefer this confusion because without identity, you can invent one daily. You can become whatever seems most profitable, most applauded, most viral. In this grotesque theater, genuine personal value becomes a burden. Maybe you think you're observing from the sidelines, not participating in this performance. But pause and be honest. How often have you shaped your words to fit in? How many times did you consider sharing your failures but hid them instead, sensing nobody would celebrate them? I don't blame you. This system was designed so even those with character eventually surrender. Every abandonment of authenticity adds another brick to the wall, separating who you are from who you pretend to be. But there's an even more twisted aspect. Superficiality doesn't just infect how you present yourself to the world. It also poisons how you interpret others. It turns you into a judge who condemns based on appearances. Have you caught yourself thinking someone was less valuable because they couldn't promote themselves effectively? Have you secretly laughed at someone who doesn't understand self-promotion language? Even when their work is 10 times more valuable than those who boast constantly, there lies the final trap. Superficiality isn't just individual disguise. It's a shared culture, a godless religion everyone worships, even while claiming to believe in nothing. Like every religion, it needs heretics to sacrifice so the rest remain obedient. Whenever someone refuses to participate in the charade, others feel compelled to identify them, ridicule them, isolate them. Because if one person dares to live without masks, they prove everyone else could do the same. Do you realize how deep this mechanism runs? It's not merely a self-esteem issue, it's a global system that transforms every interaction into a stage. You can't escape without paying a price. If you decide to step aside, to stop competing for attention, the immediate consequence is invisibility. This is what terrifies modern humans most. Being unseen, having their existence pass without witnesses. But there's something they don't want you to discover, something that shakes this game's foundation. Voluntary invisibility is pure power. When you no longer need approval, you become unmanipulable. When you become indifferent to public opinion, you become unpredictable. This frightens those who only know how to relate through constant comparison. Look closely. The world rewards the superficial because they sustain the illusion. They're actors performing the same script daily to prove appearance matters more than substance. Meanwhile, those who dare to be authentic become threats because they represent living proof that you can exist without seeking permission, without showing off, without applying makeup to please. Right now, you might feel strange vertigo, a mixture of fear and relief. Fear because everything you thought was secure begins crumbling, and relief because deep down you always knew something was sick about this need to pretend. That relief is your conscience reminding you that substance matters, that the essential is neither published nor filtered. But I warn you, if you decide to return to authenticity, prepare for uncomfortable silence. When you no longer shout to be seen, the world takes time to notice your absence. In that silence, you'll hear for the first time the voice that was always beneath your disguises. You might not like what it says. It might show you parts of yourself you preferred to ignore. But that voice is the only thing that truly belongs to you. Are you willing to meet it, or do you prefer to keep pretending the showcase is real life? As long as you keep believing the display is reality, you'll remain just another pawn in the machine that rewards the superficial and despises the genuine. But there's something even more perverse we haven't mentioned yet. Superficiality doesn't only distort your identity, it also corrupts how you relate to others. If you look closely, you'll realize almost all current human connections are contaminated by this need to show off. We no longer seek to understand others. We just check if they serve as mirrors for us, if they validate what we display, if they return a reflection that confirms we're among those who matter. This is how empty friendships form. Cardboard alliances, loves that dissolve as soon as someone dares to show themselves without packaging. Because superficiality cannot tolerate true intimacy, it fears it. Authentic closeness demands vulnerability, and vulnerability is a luxury the ego cannot afford when it lives dependent on the showcase. Have you noticed that everyone boasts about having deep relationships, but almost nobody could explain what they really feel? Have you seen how many couples seem more interested in projecting perfect images than in truly knowing each other? This is the price of being trapped in form. The more we obsess over external appearance, the less capable we become of sustaining something real. Because the real is imperfect, contradictory, uncomfortable, and that doesn't photograph well for a public profile. Look at your circle. Think about how many truly know you. Not the character you display, but that part of you that doesn't shine, doesn't seduce, can't be sold. How many could describe your thinking when you're not seeking approval? If you're honest, you'll discover almost nobody. Because showing yourself as you really are has a price, losing the interest of those who were only there for the edited version of your life. This is the problem's core. Superficiality is not only profitable, it's also contagious. When one person wears a disguise, they push others to do the same. It's a domino effect of falseness that turns any environment into a runway where everyone competes for meaningless applause. Meanwhile, the silence of the authentic grows in the background, waiting for someone to have the courage to name it. But there's another aspect almost nobody mentions, making this topic even more twisted. Superficiality doesn't just turn you into an actor without your own script. It also steals your time. Time you could spend building something meaningful. Time you could invest in discovering your passions when there are no witnesses. Time you could give to the few people who truly deserve to see your truth. Think about it. Every post you plan, every sentence you rehearse, every image you perfect is a lost minute. That minute never returns. While you obsess about looking brilliant, someone quietly is reading, learning, reflecting. Someone who tomorrow will surpass you because they chose depth over spectacle. Here's the cruelest paradox. The more you strive to prove your worth, the less time you have to build it. Because attention isn't an infinite resource. Every ounce of energy spent trying to please is energy you stop investing in growth. This is the secret nobody wants to admit. Superficial people don't just live worried about what others say. They also live impoverished of purpose. But there's an even more uncomfortable point you should know. Superficiality has a psychological trap that works like a drug. Initially, it seduces you because it seems easy. A quick compliment, a glance of approval, a fleeting feeling of relevance. But when it fades, it leaves you with a void bigger than before. Like any good addict, you can only think about the next dose. This is why so many prefer to stay on that endless wheel. Because the alternative, facing their own internal silence, is a fear not everyone can bear. The constant spectacle is a form of anesthesia. While you appear busy with self-promotion, you don't have to ask what all this means. You don't have to acknowledge that maybe your life isn't as interesting as you pretend. Now imagine deciding to leave the stage, to stop announcing every step, to allow your value to build itself in darkness. Most people can't even stand to think about it. It terrifies them because they discover their identity depended entirely on being seen. That without witnesses there's no character, and without character there's nothing that defines them. But what they don't know is that initial void is the door to something they'll never find on the surface. Authenticity. A force that doesn't need spotlights because it doesn't care to be seen. A brutal clarity that tells you harshly who you are when nobody applauds. In that discovery, superficiality loses all its power. So examine yourself closely. Ask whether everything you show is really yours, or just a disguise you learned to craft to survive in a world that rewards appearances. You don't have to answer now, but if you have the courage to stay alone with yourself for a moment, the answer will come. It might make you so uncomfortable that you'll want to cover it up with another brilliant post. But remember this, everything that shines without substance eventually dims. Everything. When that artificial light extinguishes, only what you've built in the shadows will remain. If there's nothing there, the silence will be unbearable. But if you had the courage to bet on what's real, you'll discover that silence is actually your only true refuge. Here we reach the ending nobody prepares you to face. If you decide to leave superficiality behind, your whole world will begin to shake. When you no longer play to be what they expect, those who only came for your facade will start to disappear. They'll leave without noise, like shadows that were never yours. That loss, though it may seem like tragedy, is actually the most valuable cleansing you'll ever experience. At first, you'll feel like you're walking through a desert. You'll miss the constant stimulation. You'll long for cheap validation. You'll doubt yourself every day. But gradually, you'll discover something that fits in no-follower statistics. The serenity of owing your identity to nobody. The certainty that what you build doesn't depend on a handful of hurried eyes. The freedom to exist without asking permission. Then something extraordinary will happen. You'll start attracting those who also got tired of the set. People who don't look for a showcase but a place to be without decorations. You'll discover conversations that don't need witnesses. Laughter that doesn't require posts. Complicities that will never be trending topics, but that are worth more than any fleeting applause. This is the territory almost nobody reaches because it demands a sacrifice very few are willing to pay. To give up being seen in order to be. I won't lie to you. It's the most uncomfortable journey you can undertake because it tears all your masks off at once and leaves you naked before the only gaze that matters. Your own. But if you decide to stay there, if you resist the temptation to run back to the spectacle, one day you'll wake up and understand that you no longer need to show anything, that your worth doesn't depend on a stage. That superficiality has lost all its power over you. When you reach that point, something inside you will ignite with a light as silent as it is indestructible. The light of what's authentic. Now, if all this stirred something inside you, if you felt even a second of discomfort, I want you to use it as a sign that there's still something in you that hasn't been contaminated, something that beats beneath the need to please. something that waits for you to one day decide to stop living through appearances. If you really have the courage to question the game, I invite you to leave a comment with this phrase: I prefer to be real rather than brilliant. I want to know how many of those who have reached this point are willing to raise their hand and admit they're tired of pretending. Here you won't find easy advice or comforting words, but if you want to discover why everything you thought was secure is just a set, this is your refuge. If after all you decide to return to the spectacle, remember that here you'll always have a place where what cannot be faked is valued. Turn off the screen. Stay with this silence. Because sometimes the absence of noise is the only proof that something authentic is being born inside you. If you enjoyed this video, support the channel, like, share, and subscribe.